Can you hear me now? Hey guys, and welcome back to another Random Distractions video. This one's going to be another home theater one, and I wanted to see if there was any way that I could try to improve the recording, I guess, of the audio demo, especially the Dolby Atmos one. And granted, this thing that I'm about to show you is not going to record it in the same 5.1 surround, but hopefully the recording itself will sound a lot better. I've seen a lot of videos on this one, quite a bit. It's the Zoom H1N handy recorder is what it actually says on there. I just got it today, so I'll open it up and go ahead and try to record that Dolby Atmos demo again once more and see if that sounds better. If it does, maybe that'll give a better idea of like what I'm hearing in the system using the Anthem MRX 1140 paired with the Pioneer Andrew Jones speakers, which are now I think over 7 years old, but they're still going strong. One of them actually, it would be my left surround speaker. I had been away, and while my wife was home, I guess something happened. They bumped into it and the stand fell over. It hit the dining room table, and then the speaker fell on the floor, and it actually cracked the vinyl. We have vinyl plank flooring, and it actually cracked one of the planks. I haven't replaced it yet. It's actually not that noticeable really, I guess, but it cracked that, and then it did leave a little bit of a dent on the speaker itself as well too, but it still seems to be working fine, so that's good. And the other reason that I kind of wanted to try to get this and see if I can get a better recording is because in my previous video, if you watch that where I go through the ARC settings and all that good stuff, one of the things that I did was actually specify the Dolby Post Processing to be used for each of the profiles. And one of the comments from somebody in the Anthem Lovers Facebook group was that he was actually surprised that I used that, because a lot of people actually in that group say not to use any of those unless you have to. Obviously, if it's late at night or if you're in an apartment where you can't have it up too loud, then using those modes definitely helps, because what it does, and I really appreciate the fact that he used the word compression, and that's what it does. It compresses the audio so that, you know, softer stuff is a little bit louder and louder stuff is a little bit softer, so it kind of evens it out. The reason why I appreciated that is because on Saturdays I help out with our church running sound, and so I use compression for some of the vocals specifically, to make sure that, you know, when their voice is low, then that we hear it a little bit better, but when their voice is too loud, that, you know, the system automatically brings them down a little bit so that they're not super loud. So I tried listening to some stuff without the Dolby post-processing, whether it was movie, music, or I've never really used night, but that one is also one of the options. But I used it with those turned off, and it really is pretty amazing as far as, like, since you are able to turn it up, or I'm able to turn it up anyway, to levels where, you know, everything sounds good, and it just seems like there's better spaciousness, like, you know, everything sounds a little bit wider, you know, it doesn't seem to be as confined, and it wasn't really confined before. I mean, it was still the soundstage was really great, but somehow it's a little bit better now. And I know I keep kind of saying that in a lot of my videos, is like every little thing I do, everything sounds just a little bit better, but it really does. And so I was really impressed as to what it sounded like, and I wanted to see if there was any way that I could try to enhance the audio recording, because right now the only things that I have are a Rode microphone, but it's more of a shotgun style microphone, and that's what I've used before. I've also used the actual microphone that came with the Anthem receiver, just connected to a laptop and using it as a USB microphone. But I did a recording with it recently, and I realized that while it does a really great job of like capturing the sub and how the sub sounds, I mean, it sounds really great. the way that it captures it, it doesn't quite capture like the rest of the range, like, you know, the highs and everything like that. So I found that to be kind of interesting. And, you know, obviously it wasn't made for that. It's made to be used with the ARC software and calibrating and all that good stuff. So it's not really made for just USB recording, but I gave it a try anyway to see what it could do. And so that's why, again, I picked this up, and I'll go ahead and hook it up and see what it sounds like. So we'll be back in a second. Just a quick note here, you can see the receiver is set to -20.5, which stayed the same for both recordings. The Zoom H1N is in the main listening position, pointed towards the TV. The SPL meter is set to C-weighted, slow, with a range of 80 to 110. Just a little side note here, just because I was never sure what to use, but the reason you want to use C-weighted is because it captures the frequency range of 30 to 10,000 hertz, while A-weighted measures typically between 500 and 10,000 hertz. You also want to pick slow to make it a little bit easier to read, because it shows a more of an average sound level. Alright, so you just saw the two videos recorded with the Zoom H1N, and I'm actually using it to record this section of the video as well. I recorded two versions of that demo, one without the Dolby processing, and then one with the movie processing mode on. After I recorded them, I sat down and listened to them for a little bit to see if I can get a better sense of how they sounded and maybe explain a little bit better what I noticed as far as the differences were in each of the recordings, just in case if you can't hear it in the audio. Unfortunately, even with the Zoom H1N, I think it's hard to convey what it sounds like in person versus what it sounds like on YouTube. I watched both of those demos that you just saw a couple of times with and without movie mode turned on. I also watched the airport clip from Captain America Civil War. Here are the things that I noticed, and hopefully I can make some sense. Since I left the receiver at the same volume for the Dolby demos, the immediate difference is, of course, how much louder movie mode is. This makes sense since it's increasing the volume on some stuff and lowering the volume on others, but because of that increased volume, it overall sounds louder. I listened to some other demos, and including the Captain America Civil War clip that I listened to, I realized that I did have to turn up when the Dolby processing was turned off a little more in order to reach that same level that movie mode was creating. In some cases, it was anywhere from 6 to 12 dB on the volume level. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I also noticed that the soundstage got a little bit wider when movie mode was turned off. When movie mode is turned on, it almost sounds like it's very center heavy, with the sound going just a little bit past my front and left right speakers. When it's turned off, it feels like the sound is actually coming almost in between my front and my back surround speaker. So it just gets a bit wider and things start to spread out from the center. It doesn't seem so center focused. Speaking of center, when movie mode is turned on, the vocals are definitely right there in the middle, and they are a bit louder. Because of that, when it's turned off, you actually do have to, like I mentioned it before, you have to turn up the volume quite a bit more to get to that same level that movie mode has. But this kind of goes into the other thing that I notice, that when the movie mode is turned off, the sound sounds just a little bit more realistic. For example, when I have movie mode turned on and during that Dolby Demo when the rain starts to fall, the movie mode is actually raising the volume of the rain enough where I can actually start to hear the reverb that they added to the rain. It's slight, but it's enough to feel just a little bit off. Having the dynamics when movie mode is turned off definitely makes a difference. During the airport clip on Civil War, when Vision shoots the laser in front of Captain America and his team, and then the two teams square off, and then they start to fight, one of the things that I noticed is that when movie mode was turned off, the laser effects just sounded a lot more intense. And when Iron Man starts flying off towards the team, the sound of his jet or whatever the shooting out to make him fly, they just sounds more impactful. And even just like the punches and the hits and things like that sound so much better. And I think it's because with movie mode, it's compressing those loud high peaks of things. And when it's turned off, it's letting those come through and just it makes them feel more intense. And that definitely brought a smile to my face for sure. And don't get me wrong, when movie mode is turned on, you still hear some of that, but I didn't realize how much of it was missing until I turned off movie mode. Another good example of this is during the Dolby Demo when you have that part where it says powerful bass and you have that loud thunder that comes in and then it kind of rolls off. In movie mode, in the clip you should be able to see that it reaches up to 99.5 dB on the SPL meter, and then it averages out to around, I think, 95 or so for the lower parts. Whereas when movie mode is turned off, that peak reaches up to 100 dB, and then it tapers down to like 87 or something like that. I'm trying to remember now what it was, but you should be able to see in the clip. One thing to remember is that since I did leave the volume set the same for both of those recordings, if I would have turned up the volume to better match what movie mode was doing, I'm sure that difference would have been a lot higher. But that's kind of a good example as to what I mean about there being a difference in the sound levels. To better show that, here's a screenshot of the waveform from those demos. As you can see, the one without processing, it has a really high peak and then it kind of goes down really low, whereas the movie mode has a high peak and then it doesn't go down very much for the rest of it, so it stays pretty constant. And so while it is louder for movie mode throughout the whole thing, for me at least it didn't seem as realistic as when I turned it off. So you may be asking yourself, so why did I put movie mode on in the first place? Well, when I first got the receiver, I didn't really know much about it, and even though I've had owned home theater receivers before, which actually did have some of those movie processing modes, I didn't really know much about them. It was initially in one of the first videos that I did, somebody had requested for me to test those, and he mentioned that, you know, it's one of those that they prefer to use. And at that time, I don't know if I mistook what he was saying as far as when to use them. But I was like, sure, I'll test them out and see what it sounds like. I think the initial loudness of movie mode when it was turned on really made me feel like, oh yeah, this sounds so much better, and I never really, you know, left it off and just kept on going with it. Now that I know though what it's doing and how it sounds, I can see why you only need to use it if you really have to. So it's really made for people who are living in apartments, or they're, you know, wanting to watch a movie at night and they don't really want to disturb somebody else in the house. And so you turn that on to help, you know, increase the volume of certain things without having to increase the volume so much on the receiver itself. For that reason though, I probably won't be using it anymore because I don't live in an apartment, and usually when I'm ready to go watch something and actually turn on my receiver and everything like that, I'm really ready to enjoy it at its full extent. So I will probably not be using movie mode going forward. And as far as the recorder goes, I've actually been pretty impressed. It's really simple to use. I think the recordings compared to what I've been able to record in the past are definitely a lot better. Just so you know, the recording format that I set it to is 48 kilohertz, 24-bit. Which is what was recommended from a lot of the videos that I watched. In the recordings, at least for when I listened to it back, the bass is pretty representative of what I'm hearing in the room itself. Of course, I don't know what you'll be using to listen to this, so the only thing that I can recommend is to use maybe a good pair of headphones or a system that has a subwoofer to at least get some sort of idea of what it might sound like. Of course, there's still no substitute for actually hearing it in person and what that sounds like. However, compared to what I was using before, I think these recordings definitely sound better, so hopefully that helps in conveying what it sounds like for me. So I'm looking forward to using this in other videos and other audio recordings. Like I said, I think it's very simple to use, easy to use. The sound just sounds really good compared to what I've been using. And even with things like this, I'm able to use a different lens on my camera, have it further away, but still be able to record really good audio with this thing here. And actually syncing up afterwards is really not that hard. So that's also a plus. Well, that's all I had for this video. Thanks for hanging in there, guys. Hopefully, like I said, these recordings will sound a little bit better than what I've done in the past. Maybe, you know, you've learned a little bit something about whether or not to use movie mode with your Anthem product. For me, I will not be using it, and I want to thank David from the Anthem Audio Lovers group on Facebook for letting me know, and thanks again for using that word compression, because that really cleared it up in my head for sure as to what it was doing. And you can see from the recordings and from what I heard and the waveform that it's definitely compressing stuff and things like that. So would definitely appreciate a like, of course, on this video. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when the next one drops. Again, I definitely appreciate any comments, suggestions, tips that you have. I've learned so much from people on YouTube and people on Facebook that have watched these videos. Like I said in the beginning, it's like every time I learned something, it sounds just a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. So thanks again for all that. I really appreciate it. Until the next video, I hope you have a good one.